What's going on, guys? This is the Edge DFS. We're talking Showdown, Falcons versus Panthers, Thursday Night Football. My name is Tyson Smith. I'm joined by Ellie Hernandez, A-Dubs King 24. What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Doing pretty good, man. Glad to be back home, but having to switch up offices tonight. So just making it work. How about you?
Hey, not bad, man. I was traveling, and yeah, we got some decent football. So what are you expecting for this from this Falcons game? Actually, let's pull up the line here. Let's actually look at what we got going on. So Atlanta's favored. It's a 51 over/under, 2.5 spread. Looks like we got a little weather to talk about. We'll get into that in a minute, but it looks like there's a little bit of rain possibly at kickoff tomorrow. So just right out of the gate, let me get your opinion on this game as a football game, and then we'll get into DFS-wise after that.
I actually think this could end up being a fun game to watch. It is a rivalry game. It is inside the division. And Carolina isn't that bad. I think Carolina is a pretty good team. Atlanta's offense is pretty explosive, and their defense has tightened up the past couple of weeks. Yeah, they give up a lot of points, but I think they're a little bit different of a team than what we were seeing at the beginning of the season. And I mean, to be fair, you can only get better when you give up two of the worst losses or comeback losses in the history of the game back to back. So
Yeah.
It'll be interesting, but I think Atlanta will be able to keep this competitive. But Carolina could be pretty solid tonight or tomorrow night.
I think Atlanta is obviously not a good team. There's going to be a lot of changes in the offseason. They're just trying to make it through the year. But they're not as bad as, I mean, they're not the Jets. They're not the Giants. Like, this team has upside. Matt Ryan is still a good quarterback. Usually the problem isn't Matt Ryan, and usually the problem isn't the offense. It's whether it's coaching, it's play calling, it's deciding how they want to handle clock management, things like that. That's made this team an embarrassment. I think this week they can either overcome that, which like they did last week. They were one kind of bad luck, fluky play of Todd Gurley falling into the end zone of winning that game. And obviously you got Matt Stafford on the other side. You can't blame the whole thing on Atlanta. The other team had to come back and have a crazy drive with no timeouts left, obviously. But I think Atlanta has a good shot in this game. Vegas agrees. I mean, it's a 2.5 spread. Minus 139 for Carolina. We saw the other day that Monday night, or was it Monday night game? Yeah, the Monday night game was an absolute. Vegas did not think that was going to be a close game, and it turned out not to be. It was a shit show. But this one seems to be like it could be a little closer. Which, if that's the case, I kind of like, going with some Atlanta players here because of the pricing. But Carolina, last week they lost that game. So if you just look at the box score, you think, oh man, Carolina's 3-4. They're not having a good season. They should have won that game. They had an opportunity to win that game. It was close the entire game. There wasn't a lot of penalties. Teddy Bridgewater looked great. He got sacked out of field goal range at the end of that game. They decided to kick, there was more than 2 minutes left. They decided to kick an NFL record attempt of 65 yards with over 2 minutes left, and the dude missed it just by like a foot. I mean, if he had a little bit of extra on that would have been the NFL record, and it would have possibly won them the game. Instead, the Saints get the ball back. They get a first down. They run the clock down. It was an anticlimactic way of winning the game for the Saints, and just a terrible way for Carolina to lose. So Carolina can win. Carolina's a good team. I mean, we saw them beat our Cardinals. We've seen them. They're up and down. They have a pretty good offense, reasonably good defense. So I think this game can be interesting. It's not sexy. If it's not sexy, and it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard DFS wise, just because of the pricing. It's very difficult to figure out who we want to go to, because both of these teams are sort of inconsistent, especially Atlanta. We don't know which pass catchers are really going to step up. So let's look at injuries. We have to actually talk about this before we get any farther. The only real injury to talk about is Christian McCaffrey. Now, based on Ian Rappaport's tweet here, he's not on the injury report because he hasn't even been activated from the IR. To me, that's not a good sign. I mean, even if he is activated, I don't really want to play him. I mean, obviously, he's not ready to carry the load. And when you have a guy like Mike Davis, who's been tearing it up since McCaffrey's been injured, there's no reason to rush this guy back. There really isn't, in my opinion. This is your franchise player. He is your future. He's the best running back in the league, arguably, when he's healthy. To me, I don't think McCaffrey is going to play. We're recording this on Wednesday night, so things can change. But to me, if McCaffrey is active, I'm still going to fade him because he's the most expensive guy on the slate. What do you think about McCaffrey? Do you think he's going to play? What road do you go down if he does play?
Honestly, I kind of hope he does play because I think that'll just spread out ownership all over the place. And I think it's going to open up a lot if that happens because I'm with you. I think they're just doing this. This is just a ploy. I don't think he's going to play even if he is active. They might get him a couple snaps to see how he's doing, but I mean, it doesn't really make sense. I mean, if you don't play this game, you essentially have. Do they play the next week? I mean, if they have a bye, they could just rest him, and even then, it's still 10 days rest if they do play that following weekend. So I think they're fine in the division. They've proven that they can win games without him. So it doesn't make sense to risk him. But again,
I do hope he does.
Keep a close eye on it.
I do hope he does. I hope he's active, and I hope they say he's going to play because that'll really mess up the ownership, in my opinion. And I think the sharper players can actually benefit because there's going to be a lot of ownership funneled to him, which is a waste of ownership, in my opinion, for sure. I mean, can he score a touchdown? Yeah, but to hit his upside at his price tag, which is 11.8K. I mean, if he starts, I'm still Xing him out. I'm not going to even have one share of him because he's too expensive, and I just don't think they're going to. He's not going to be the workhorse like he usually is. There's no reason to have any shares of him. So let's look at real quick. I want to look at the previous box score here. Let's see. Let's check this out real quick. So this is the Falcons versus the Lions last week. Obviously, we know it was sort of a debacle there at the end. Todd Gurley fell into the end zone. They could have run the clock down to close to 0 and kicked a chip shot from the 1-yard line to win it. Instead, didn't work out the way they wanted. Matt Ryan looked good, threw for 338, no interceptions. Todd Gurley got 23 carries. We're gonna go into the trends as far as percentages of snaps and air yards and things like that later on in the show. But for now, Todd Gurley's getting most of the carries. Brian Hill's not really getting much love at all. He's not getting a lot of targets. And if we talk about the other game here, we got the Panthers versus the Saints last week. We were just talking about this. Look, DJ Moore had a hell of a game. He had 2 touchdowns. You had Robbie Anderson have a pretty consistent game, as well as Curtis Samuel had a rushing touchdown, and Curtis Samuel also had 6 receptions. So if you look at the opposing team, Kamara and Latavius Murray, they were very consistent on the ground against the Panthers. And I would never compare Todd Gurley to Alvin Kamara right now, but there's similar styles. These guys can run between the tackles. You could sweep it out on the outside to these guys. You can toss it to them. They can catch the ball. They're dynamic type players. Obviously, Todd Gurley is on the back end of his career. He still has a little bit left. But the way that the Carolina defense handled the rushing attack of the Saints, I know it's only one game, but if you're if you're Todd Gurley, I think you have an opportunity to have a pretty good game. And people, I don't think Todd Gurley's going to be owned in this game because he's priced up a little bit. Anyways, what do you think about the rushing attack here? Do you think Todd Gurley has any shot against Atlanta? Or I'm sorry, against Carolina?
Yeah, I actually like Todd Gurley a lot this week. He is pretty decently priced, and his last couple of weeks he's been getting a lot of carries. 23 attempts, 20 the week prior, and he got 14, 16, 14. But he's getting the love, so he can be dynamic, and there's enough weapons on the Atlanta offense that they're not going to be able to stack the box against him the whole game. So he's going to be up against 7-man fronts. You can't just leave Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones on single coverage all day, right? So I fully anticipate Todd Gurley to have a decent game. And again, Carolina is a pretty good team. So you want to control these teams that are a little bit better than you. You do it by keeping the ball out of their hands. So I expect to see Todd Gurley's usage to probably stay on pace for what he had the last game, or bump up a little bit. I could see him getting 25, 26 touches.
So let's check out addmorefunds.com. This is a free site you guys can check out. They have a Patreon. You can download all these features to a CSV. You can export them. Great site. We're looking at the team trends here, and it's a little small. Hopefully you guys can see this. Hopefully you guys are watching this on a laptop. If not, we'll zoom in for the next episode. Todd Gurley here on the season, as far as rushing percentage for the team, he's at a 63.5% of the rushes. Last week he had 88% of rushes. Brian Hill's barely getting anything. I think this game in general, with Mike Davis and Todd Gurley, you have a clear-cut number one running backs, and you have guys that'll come in and sort of spell them. Typically, we haven't been seeing that a lot in the NFL, and especially on Showdown, you have dudes who are getting 55 to 60% at most of the snaps or the rush attempts, and then the secondary running back comes in and will catch 4 or 5 balls, have 8 or 9 rush attempts. In this case, Todd Gurley he's going to get all the rush attempts. The only reason why you wouldn't want to play him is if they're down by a lot, because Brian Hill will get more opportunities. And I think because of the fact that Atlanta is not favored, they're the underdog, and they've had a bad run this year, I think maybe his ownership will be lower than it should be, Todd Gurley's ownership. Let's look at Carolina's here. You got Mike Davis. He's, as far as rushing percentage, 50% last week, 62% the week before, 59% the week before. So this guy's not getting as much volume as Todd Gurley, but he's still dangerous in the pass game. His receiving share, his target share is third on the team, just behind Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. So let's get into Mike Davis. What are your thoughts on him? And are you going to get a lot of Mike Davis this week? What do you think about him? Is he priced too high?
I don't know. I think I'm going to have a decent amount of exposure, but I think it's going to be balanced between him and Todd Gurley. But if Christian McCaffrey is not playing, I think you have to have a pretty healthy exposure to Mike Davis. He is still the workhorse back. He is still going to get a majority of the carries, and he could have. We got to see what Atlanta defense shows up, right? We got to be prepared for both sides of the coin. He could rush for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, or he could sit at 40, but have 6 receptions because they're all playing pass all day. So it's going to be interesting. I'm going to have a balanced exposure. I probably won't have much of Mike Davis and Todd Gurley in the same lineup.
Yeah.
So that it's going to be an interesting way to build tomorrow for sure.
It is very interesting, and I think we're going to have to. We'll talk about this later, but I think we're going to have to get a little bit different at captain as far as pricing goes because I just don't know where to go. Like these teams are very spread out, both receiver wise, running back wise. We kind of know where it goes, but receiver wise, I just don't know where to aim at. Look at Mike Davis's the past 2 games. He's not really he's not done well enough. Obviously, he's fallen off a little bit lately. We have 2 losses in a row for. We have two losses in a row for these guys against Chicago and New Orleans. So that could be a reason why. If we think that the Carolina Panthers can win this game, then maybe we'll get a different result. But 8.6 fantasy points, 12.5 in the last 2 weeks. Not great. I don't think that's going to affect his ownership too much. I don't think people are really going to care too much because he's the starting running back on a favorite team. But let's move on. Well, first off, do we have any interest in the backup running backs on these teams? We've got Brian Hill, and I mean, we really don't have any backup running back for the Panthers, to be honest. It's spread out quite a bit. Do you like Brian Hill at all? Will you get any shares at 2,200? I just don't see the upside there. I don't see the volume.
No, I won't. I won't have anybody I won't have any of these backup running backs. It's just too risky.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to quarterback. What are your thoughts on 10.6K Teddy Bridgewater and an 11K Matt Ryan? Obviously, we don't have ownership yet, but typically on a showdown slate, your quarterbacks are the highest owned guys unless you have a Daniel Jones situation or something like that. I anticipate that Teddy Bridgewater will be the highest owned considering his projection and his price. Where are you going when it comes to quarterback? Typically, I base it on the slate. I'll try to limit to one quarterback sometimes. In this case, I kind of like both guys. I think they have both good upside. Where are you going with this?
So just to be completely honest with you, I agree with you. I think both quarterbacks are in a great position to have a really good night. But I think with the amount of Teddy Bridgewater has been doing all right from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a lot of people high on him because of just recency bias. So I think, and this is probably going to lose me all my money tomorrow night, but I think Teddy Bridgewater might be okay to fade. Now, if ownership comes in and it's telling us a completely different story, then trust me, I will be the first one to jump back on the Teddy Bridgewater train because he has the rushing upside. I mean, that's just something you can't discount a quarterback for.
Yeah.
Those rushing points account for so much, but I fully anticipate him to have the bulk of the ownership. He's cheaper than Matt Ryan. He's projected for more points. And he's been hot lately. But Matt Ryan, he's been doing well too, and I still think he can go out and throw for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns. So I think you have to have at least one of them, and I think fading one of them is going to be risky, but it may be necessary to be able to get different enough to win.
Yeah, I agree. I think both these guys can really have a ceiling type game. In this particular game, you have a 51 total, which it's not amazing considering what we've seen this year so far, but it's not a 44.5 point where you're loading up with kickers and defense like it was on Monday. You're right. Teddy Bridgewater has rushing upside. If he gets 50 yards, that's another passing touchdown, So just with an average rushing game for a quarterback that we've seen this year, we've seen 70, 80 yards for quarterbacks. If he can get 40 or 50 yards rushing, it's the equivalent of another passing touchdown. All right.
I mean, Kyler won me all my money back on Sunday. Granted, I had Kyler and Lockett and Hopkins, but still,
Well, it helps. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to wide receivers here. We're going to start with the Falcons. So let me just toss this to you. What are your thoughts? I know you're a big Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones fan. how do we decipher these guys? Can we play them in the same lineup? I mean, they're both expensive. You got Calvin Ridley at 10.2. You've got Julio Jones at 9.8. Are these guys negatively correlated? Can they be like a Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf sort of combo? I know they're both good, but can they both go off in the same game?
Yeah, they absolutely can. I don't think it matters, the negative correlation in this particular case. I mean, I wouldn't run Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones, and Todd Gurley together, for example. That might be too much negative correlation. But Calvin Ridley and Julio, they could end up being the two top scorers on the slate together. What did Julio have last week?
Here, let's look. He didn't have a great game. I mean, he had 17.7 points. So you can't say that's not a great game, but it might not be optimal.
Right. But I mean, if you look at it, he's a touchdown away from potentially getting there. And granted, we also had to deal with Lockett and Devontae Adams on Sunday, so you just probably weren't in the optimal. And then Calvin Ridley, I mean, 7 targets, 5 receptions, 70 yards, and a touchdown. So he's not getting his 10, 12 targets that he gets when Julio is hurt. But these are both one-play guys. They're both two ridiculously fast receivers. They're physical receivers. They are going to catch a touchdown. I think you have a better chance of each one of them scoring a touchdown than neither of them scoring a touchdown.
I think when ownership comes out, if one is drastically lower, I think you just go heavy on that guy. That's my opinion on it. I think that's the obvious way to handle it. I just don't have either one of these guys could go off. They could both go off. I think you could actually be unique by having both of them and Matt Ryan in a lineup and trying to find value in other areas, maybe fading Bridgewater and going with, some lower priced wide receivers on the other team. It's going to be tough to figure out how to handle this because they're priced up so much. Russell Gage got hurt at the beginning of that game, I believe. I was watching the game. I was watching a replay of it. He was out for most of it, and then I think he came back in. He ended up scoring 11 points, which not bad for his salary at $6,400 for a showdown slate. Now he's only $4,200, so he's dropped $2,200 in price. I think this is a guy you can consider. Russell Gage getting 7 targets last week. I think it's a guy you can totally consider.
Yeah, Russell Gage is my guy. I think he is a great number 3 to fit in with Calvin and Julio. And he had 7 targets, 5 the week before. He's getting the same amount of targets as Calvin Ridley. That means something. He may not have the same big play upside, but at 4,200, I mean, 5 receptions and 70 yards is significant.
Another guy to look at is Brandon Powell. He did get some snaps. Let's actually look at this real quick. Let's look at Atlanta. Let's look at week 7 only. I want to check out target percentage wise. Powell, only 5% of the targets. He got 2 targets. So nothing to write home about. But look, if you got a guy at $200, these are the kind of guys that can break the slate. If he catches 2 balls for 15 yards and a touchdown, and you got $200 guy in there at 5% owned, that could change everything for you if you have the right pieces around it. Something to keep in mind. I would highly suggest checking out addmorefunds.com. Check the site out. It's free. You can look at these sort of things. You could find your edge by really diving into the numbers, diving into the snap rates, figuring out some of these low-owned, low-priced guys that have opportunity, because that's in Showdown, opportunity is really important. It's not always about the result. It's about throwing a dart at a guy that has the shot at catching a touchdown. That's pretty important. So let's move on to Carolina's receivers. You've got a clear-cut number 1 and 2, and whether it's 1A, 1B, or it's 1 and 2 is up for debate. But DJ Moore had a hell of a game last week. He's at 8,200, but you have Robbie Anderson with a high ceiling, high air yards. at 9,200. He's $1,000 more. In my opinion, DJ Moore is going to be way higher owned than Robbie Anderson because of the roster construction and because he had a hell of a game last week. How do you differentiate between Anderson and Moore with this? Are you ever going to play these guys together? Can you afford to?
I won't have much more at all. I'm gonna go with Robbie Anderson. He's being utilized completely different than he was with the Jets, and I think he's gonna absolutely destroy. Go back to add more funds and pull up air yards for them if you can.
Yeah, they're actually both high. They're both very high. So let's see, air yard percentage wise. Moore is actually higher than Anderson, which is surprising because Anderson has that, that big play ability, and you just don't, DJ Moore is not as sexy as Robbie Anderson sometimes.
Do target share for me.
So Anderson 3% more.
Okay, I might have to look at some of the trending on that. I know last week it probably went significantly to DJ Moore, just because of his performance. But yeah, I agree. Honestly, this is an easy pivot for me though. If DJ Moore is gonna be chalky, I would rather have Robbie Anderson.
Agreed.
That's more of a gut football feeling.
So look at this. We have air yards wise for the entire league for this season. You've got DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley, and Robbie Anderson, and then DK Metcalf and Hill, all ranked, in the top 10. So we have three of the top sort of big play receivers in this one game. A lot can happen. There's a lot of variance that can go down in this game. I'm going to be spread out a little bit more than I usually am. I'm typically with the number one wide receiver, like a Robbie Anderson, I would typically have, I wouldn't be afraid to have 80% of him out of my 20 lineups. I think I'm going to spread out a little bit more today because of the variance, and Robbie Anderson could literally end up with 2 catches for 10 yards. It's possible. Or he can end up with 7 catches and 200 yards. It's just hard to tell with this game.
He can also do 2 catches for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Exactly. So one guy I wanted to bring up is Curtis Samuel. I think this guy's ownership is going to be next to nothing. He doesn't project well. He's at 5,400. He gets the opportunity. I'm not trying to be, heavy on recency bias, but you got last week. He did he had a rushing touchdown. He lined up in the backfield. They handed the ball off to him, and he ran the ball into the end zone from, I don't know, what was it, 5-yard rush in the red zone. Now, that's not something I'm expecting every week, or I'm expecting this week. But what I'm saying is this guy has opportunity. He got 6 targets, 6 receptions. He caught all his balls, and he rushed one into the end zone. He also was targeted a few times deep, and that shit won't show up in the box score. So if you watch this game, I highly recommend you go back and watch the game if you have access to it. Curtis Samuel to me is my sleeper because no one's gonna own this guy because there's 4 other. He's the 4th as far as target share goes. He is number 4 in target share on this team, behind Anderson, behind DJ Moore, and behind the running back on the team. So Mike Davis, I blanked on his name. So he's number 4. So he's just not going to get as much love as he should. And we'll get into our sort of captain picks later, but I think this guy is kind of a sneaky pick this week because of the price and because it makes you so much different. Any other thoughts on Carolina wide receivers? I don't think there's really anyone else to talk about. And what do you think about Samuel? Are you going to get any Samuel at all?
Yeah, I'll have a little bit of Samuel. I think I'll probably have 10-15% exposure. It'll be interesting to kind of see how the ownership goes on this because, it might be interesting to just stack the 3 of them, Robbie, DJ Moore, and Curtis Samuel. Yeah. And then throw in Calvin Ridley or something and then go from there. I don't know. It could be it could be an interesting build with that with all three. But I don't know. I like him a little bit now.
Stay
He
tuned.
convinced me.
I really don't care either way. I'm just looking at the numbers. I'm also building with him, and there's a lot of possibility if you throw this guy in. Now, can he be the leading receiver on the team? I mean, the chances are probably pretty low, but he can have a high upside game, and you can have a roster construction that's unique, and you might not even need him to be the highest scoring player. Unless there's a Tyler Lockett situation where Robbie Anderson goes off for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. Obviously, you got to have him in the captain. I think that could happen. I think if you're trying to play safe and you're doing single entry, maybe Robbie Anderson is a better captain pick, or even DJ Moore. But Curtis Samuel in a 100,000 entry, 100K to first, or the Millie Maker, I think that guy can win you some money for sure. Now let's move on to the tight ends for Carolina. There's not really anything to write home about. In fact, I might just X this position out. Ian Thomas, he caught 1 ball last week, I think. Let's check it out. Let's see what he got last week.
Don't even do it.
He caught 1 ball. Yeah, let's just move on. Let's not waste our viewers' time here. Let's move on to Atlanta. And go ahead. Lead off with Atlanta. Tell me what you think.
I like Hayden Hurst a lot. I think Matt Ryan likes Hayden Hurst a lot. I think whoever the hell the coach is in Atlanta now likes him a lot. I think Dan Quinn should have used him a lot more. But he'll probably be one of my favorite captains this week. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But dude is a good tight end. And he came over from Baltimore, right? He was one of the backups for Baltimore last year. And I think he's really starting to get involved in the offense. And once again, the same comment about Todd Gurley. You can only do so much with your defense with these kind of weapons. You can't leave Julio on an island. You can't leave Ridley on an island. And to be quite frank, most defenses don't have enough good players to cover that many people anyways. So if Hayden Hurst is coming down the middle, I mean, you're going to be struggling to cover these guys. So What do you see over here?
So first off, before we get into the numbers, last week, if you just watched that game, he was the number 1 target for Matt Ryan. Whenever that guy even looked open, they threw him the ball. He looked great in the first half. I think they sort of figured it out in the second half, but the guy just eye test wise looked amazing last week. Now, if you look at snap percentage, he has the second highest snap percentage. Obviously, he's a tight end. He's going to be on the field quite a bit blocking. But when it comes to target share, he's similar to Russell Gage. But I think he's trending up since they got rid of Dan Quinn. I think they're actually utilizing him quite a bit more. So when you look at the numbers, it's a little deceiving. But I think if you watch the last 2 games, or especially the last game, you see that this guy has upside, and he's going to be targeted more than the numbers suggest on an average for the season. He's at 14% target share. Red zone target share as at 10%. Like I said, it doesn't pop out. He's sort of the 4th target on the team, but not if you just watch the games. You'll realize he's an important part of the offense. And I think getting this guy in at 6,400, similar to my pick of Curtis Samuel at 5,400, I think you can really be different in the captain spot. We'll get into that in a minute. Anything else to add for the skill positions of these teams, both teams?
No, man, not really. I mean, I think it's going to be a fairly straightforward week. You're just going to have to try and figure out a build that gets some of these studs in there.
All right, so obviously the weather is an issue. I think it's about. I had the weather pulled up, but they crashed our stream because of weather.com kind of sucks. So basically, around kickoff 8:20 Eastern, it's 60% chance of rain today. That's about 24 hours from now. In football, the weather doesn't matter too much, but there are some thunderstorms in the forecast. When it comes to the passing game, that might hurt a little bit. Obviously, you got 2 glove Teddy, who might not worry about it with the gloves. But as far as kicking goes, I think it downgrades the kicking. I think it upgrades the defense a little bit. You got Joey Sly, who almost hit a NFL record field goal last week to basically win the game. If you cash in on a 60+ yard field goal in fantasy, and that really at 4K, that could be in the optimal. When was it? It was last slate. It was Monday night. I think we had a double. Did we have a double kicker optimal? I don't remember.
It was a double defense.
Double defense, but I think I think the kicker scored well. Joey Sly and our boy Young Ho. He didn't have a great game last week, but it doesn't really matter. These guys both have high upside. What are you thinking? Is this a double kicker situation with all the weather coming in, or do you fade them?
Yeah, I'm not. I'm probably not going to have either of these. I might have Younghoe Koo, but I don't know. I don't think I'm going to have much exposure to either of them. Are these fantasy points for the last few games for Joey Sly, right? 3, 1, 2?
No. 7 last week. He had one 50-yarder. I'm sorry, under 50-yarder, whatever that means. That's weirdly put. And he missed that 65-yarder. So you got 7, 11, 11, and 7, 15. So he has a relatively high floor for Joey Sly. Our boy Young Ho. He also, his standard deviation is going to be higher. Let's see, what is his standard deviation? 5.7 as opposed to Joey Sly's at 3.9. Young Ho has a little bit higher of a ceiling, but if you look at his past performances, he had a bad week last week. Not necessarily his fault. He made both extra points. He didn't miss a single field goal. The week before, he had 20 points. He went 3 for 3 and 4 for 4 on extra points. Our boy Young Ho in the rain, I just don't know how to treat the kickers if it's pouring rain.
Yeah, I don't like the kickers, man.
I never liked the kickers, bro. I never liked the kickers.
Yeah, dude, it's a 51-point total. I think Russell Gage is a similarly priced guy, and he has an opportunity to potentially catch a touchdown. You know what I mean? I don't think I want to rely on Atlanta scoring 17 touchdowns and Koo getting all those extra points. Yeah. Even then, that would screw you. So, I don't know. I'm not going to be heavy on kickers at all.
I think they're going to pop in the opto, in my opinion, simply because they're right around that 4 and 3.8K range. There's not a lot of median projected players that hit that mark of 10 points at that range. The value is high. So if you're thinking on a median range, they're going to end up in your optimal. When you're crunching, they're going to end up in more lineups. I just don't think that you're going to need them this week. I think you got guys that are a little bit more expensive that you can go to as opposed to the kickers. When it comes to defenses, I think the Falcons' defense obviously is nothing to write home about. But I feel like they're a little bit better recently. I don't think there's high upside for interception or fumble returns or any sort of scoring on the special teams. But if I ended up with 1 or 2 lineups with the Falcons in it, I wouldn't be too upset about that. What are your thoughts on defenses this week?
Yeah, I don't know if I really want any, but yeah, the Falcons. See, I was thinking about this too. I'm not entirely sure where I'm at with this. I might just end up Xing them out because of their price. The optimizers are going to try and jam them in. And then force in some of the more optimal plays. And again, I just think those pivots. If we're looking at all of our players in that kind of price range. See, Ian Thomas is projected for more points than the Falcons defense. And I really think the Falcons and Panthers can both go out there and end up with 0 points on defense.
Yeah,
too.
I'd rather get Brian Hill. I'd rather get Ian Thomas. I'd rather get our boy Young Ho. Even Osmodeus, I don't know, the fucking Watchmen character. I obviously at $1,000, he's not getting a lot of opportunity. But I'd rather throw a dart with one of those guys with a higher upside than banking on a shitty defense to randomly pick up a fumble and return it for a touchdown. That's just my
And keep in
opinion.
mind, any one of these Falcons receivers could get injured at any point in this game, and it's not to be a dick or anything, but it's just they're physical guys, so they're going to take a little bit of a beating. If one of them drops out, immediately you're getting targets for Zacchaeus at 1,000. So no,
Yeah,
I
it's true.
don't necessarily build around injury, but he's not an awful play.
So that leads me into our fate of the night. And it hurts me to do this, but I just feel like Julio Jones, he has the upside, but I'd rather go with Calvin Ridley. Now, hear me out on this. If Julio Jones is drastically lower owned, if everyone has the same opinion than me, then I'm going to pivot and I'm going to go heavy on Julio Jones. So I know this is sort of a cop-out and it's a shitty-ass answer, but Julio Jones to me, just in a vacuum with the pricing, not accounting for ownership, and just knowing the injury history, this guy he hasn't been the most consistent this year when it comes to how he's feeling. Is it a hamstring injury? I don't know. It's a lower body issue, and as a wide receiver, that's hard to overcome. And he's
pretty much had a sprained ankle since his first championship with Alabama, and I'm not joking. He's had an ankle injury since he's been in the league.
So, and especially last week, I mean, he had a decent game, but I think he overcame a lot just to get to that point. So, would I be surprised if he exited in the first quarter? I don't think anybody would be surprised. You know, if you have a sideline reporter saying Julio Jones is questionable with a hamstring injury, I would just be like, yeah, that makes sense. So I want to plan for that. And if he beats me with 2 touchdowns and, 150 yards, I'm just going to accept it and move on. But I'd rather go with Calvin Ridley over Julio Jones. And that's just based off of no ownership. If the guy's 20% owned, I might have to sneak him in to, double that. But, don't hate me for saying that. But tell me about yours. Tell me about your pick.
So before I do that, I do want to piggyback off something you just said, right? So I don't even remember who my Monday night captain was that taking a stand. But I can tell you right now and tell the audience, the people that were watching that night, I didn't play any of that person at captain, right? These are just ideas that we have based on the ownership that we expect to come in tomorrow night. If we see this, because here's the thing, Julio Jones is lower priced than Calvin Ridley. So it would make sense that people are going to go to him. And he's just slightly more expensive than Robbie Anderson.
Yeah.
And again, people think that if you're going to pay, you may as well pay $400 more and get Julio Jones over Robbie.
Exactly.
So that's really what we're thinking here. We're not making we're not locking this in tonight saying tomorrow night there's no Julio, right? I'm not going to unsubscribe from Tyson because he has Julio in his lineups. These are just ideas for potential leverage plays. And that'll bring me to Teddy Bridgewater. If Matt Ryan's the chalk tomorrow night and Teddy Bridgewater is sitting at 40, 35% ownership, then I have to look at him a little bit differently. But right now, I really think that people are going to be on him. Atlanta is not. Their defense does not have an identity. They have been playing well from time to time, and they do have a lot of talent. But they also have injuries. They don't have a head coach, and it depends on which Atlanta Falcons team comes out tomorrow night. So I think that's going to give Teddy Bridgewater a decent amount of ownership. And just from a roster construction standpoint, I almost think you're better off stacking Mike Davis and then 2 of the wide receivers and getting a broader allocation of the potential points. Yeah, you can do it by playing Teddy and getting double points right whenever the stack hits together in tandem, but you can get a little bit more different, and it's going to be a little less of a chalky build by fading him and then bringing it back with Matt Ryan and Calvin Ridley. So that's really what I'm going to be looking at tomorrow night. And then I'll probably be fading Bridgewater, but that's pending ownership projections.
Well said. And based on, I did a crunch using projections that were provided today. And basically, here, let me just show you. So let me just show you these crunches. I mean, if this is any way consistent with what we're going to see tomorrow, it's going to be heavy Carolina. The casual players in the lower stakes are just going to go with the best projected. And if you look at my top 6 lineups here, I crunched 250. It's almost all 4-2s or 5-1s Carolina. Now, to me, that immediately, that was shocking to me. I had to go into my settings to make sure I didn't have, a team stack set up or, I was forcing this to happen. I didn't force any of this. This is how it came out of the box. So, to me, this just I automatically want to go 4-2 Atlanta, right off the bat, and even go to even 2-4 if I think that Curtis Samuel or Robbie Anderson can have a ceiling type game, and it could be close. Put a Robbie Anderson and Teddy Bridgewater with 4 Falcons. I actually like that a lot. Just crunching these on your own and figuring out where you think ownership can end up just based on what the optimals are. This is the optimal lineup. You've got Robbie Anderson, Joey Sly, Russell Gage, DJ Moore, Mike Davis, and Teddy Bridgewater. The pricing just works out so much better for Carolina, and you have to jam in a third-string wide receiver for the optimal. So to me, I'm going to go, if this stays the way it is, and if ownership holds up this way, I'm going to go a lot of 4-2 and even some 5-1 with Atlanta tomorrow. What do you think about roster construction just based on what I'm showing you on these crunches?
I think it supports pretty much my tout every single show. I love building 4-2s. I don't like to get too crazy with 5-1s, but we saw that wasn't it a 5-1 that won on Monday, or was it a 4-2?
5-1 with a Bears defense. Which, hang on a second, real quick, we got to talk about this. I'm sure you guys have seen dude with a stat correction 45 minutes after the end of the game loses $997,000 because of a sack stat correction for the Bears defense. Could you imagine seeing that $1 million in your account 45 minutes after it ends and then it disappearing? Fucking brutal, bro. Are you kidding me? Oh my God. That's why Showdown is not for the faint of heart at all. And in fact, don't be posting screenshots until you get that notification from Draftkings saying money is in your account, or you get that email. Don't even go down that road because shit changes, especially knowing all the FanDuel things that are going on with the stat providers. Just hold off on the screenshots until you actually have the money in your account. Anyways, I don't know where we were at, but I had to bring that up because my God, what a bad beat, man. What would you do? Would you just fucking end it if you lost $1 million in 1 minute?
I'd say that. I'd be pissed for about 8 minutes, and then I'd be pretty goddamn happy. I just made like $25,000. But
no, dude, the dude won $3,000, $3,000.
That sucks.
Man. He might have lost money if he max entered. He might have profited a couple bucks as opposed to changing his life. Fuck.
That
anyways,
sucks, dude.
All right. So we're gonna move on to our taking a stand. I want to tell you our captain choices, and then I want to move over. And I want to look at the roster construction when we actually have these captains, just to give you an idea. So for me, I'm going Curtis Samuel. I know it's a ballsy pick. I know it's not optimal. There is probably like a 5% chance of this actually working out. In my opinion, I'm totally comfortable going with a guy that provides, in the captain, that provides me, all these seltzers, that provides me high upside in the flex. Like, going Curtis Samuel, I can get all of the studs. I don't have to have any darts. I don't have to have a kicker if I don't want to. I don't have to have a random $200 fourth string wide receiver. I don't have to do any of that. To me, Curtis Samuel has the upside. He's going to be so low owned. I know it. I know he's going to be less than 10%. He's probably going to be like 4% in the captain if I just guess. I'm going with Curtis Samuel. I'm not going to have like 80% Curtis Samuel, obviously. When I say that I'm taking a stand at captain, I think that this guy has the highest upside. I think I'll probably have, if I did 20 lineups, maybe I'd do like 6 or 7 with him at captain and differentiate from there. That's just based on leverage. This isn't a cash play. This is a large field GPP play. Tell me about your play a lot, because I actually think that yours is the best overall option for tomorrow night.
Yeah, I think Hayden Hurst is going to come in fairly moderately owned. It's too easy to want to jam in as much Ridley and Jones as you can get. And honestly, dude, if I'm being completely honest, I might be liking a little bit of Todd Gurley too.
Dude, I actually had a graphic written up. I fucking photoshopped him out. I put him in, and I just couldn't do it. Right? So yes, I totally agree with you on that.
I mean, so look, right? I mean, there's going to be some interesting builds tomorrow night. I think you can run a Mike Davis, Teddy Bridgewater stack, and then jam in as many Falcons as you possibly can. You might be able to do the same thing, Matt Ryan and Todd Gurley, and then run it back with all the Panthers. Like, I mean, it's gonna be fairly interesting. I think there's a good opportunity for this game to be fairly balanced on both sides of the ball, and offense to be equally distributed. I mean, I think having a more balanced prize captain is really going to give you a lot more leverage in a 51 total game than it was in the Monday night game. And I learned my lesson on Monday night. Monday was rough. I went 4-2 stacks, but I went the other way.
Yeah,
I went way too heavy on the Bears. And in hindsight, it makes sense that you don't need to do that. That was getting too risky, considering that the Rams are clearly a better team. I still stand by the fact that they're not great. I don't think they're a really that good of a 5-2 team. Yeah. But the Bears are just god awful.
And the Bears are the worst are they 5-2 at this point? They're the worst 5-win team in the history of the NFL almost. Maybe the 2015 Cardinals or 2014 Cardinals with John Skelton. But besides that,
that was 4. But yeah, no.
Oh yeah, 4. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
no,
exactly.
They went 4-0 and then lost like 68 straight. Yeah.
Oh
yeah, I know
man,
the math
don't remind me.
But
it actually does. It actually totally does.
Yeah, if you reverse engineer it, you'll go from 2012 to the NFC Championship game.
So. Give me this. Let's throw out predictions for captain ownership in the big contest on DraftKings. I'm going to say Curtis Samuel is going to be around 6% in the captain. Maybe that's a little high. I think that's a little conservative. What do you think Hayden will be?
Oh, I think he'll be 6%, 7%. Yeah. Honestly, I think it's closer to 4, but it'll be interesting.
Which is, to me, I would rather go with one guy. I would rather have to rely on one guy going off at a medium to lower ownership and lower price that allows me to get high percentage plays in the flex than having to go with, a quarterback that's high owned and then having to get 2 or 3 low percentage, low owned guys in the flex. That's just my philosophy on things. It doesn't always work out, but I want to go with the dart throw or the medium risk dart throw in the captain, as opposed to getting 2 or 3 guys in the flex and just like basically hoping for a lottery ticket. That's just my idea on things. What do you think about that? How do you like to handle things typically? I know it goes by slate, but are you more prone to going with the medium to lower owned guy in the captain?
Yeah, 100%. Sometimes, but keep in mind I'm still balancing it out, right? So when I'm building like this, it's still everything is in relationship to exactly what you're talking about is ownership, but what the field is projected to be at. If the field's at 5% on Curtis Samuel and we come in with 15% at captain, then automatically we have 3 times as good a chance to win, to have a better lineup than most of the field, right? So that's
exactly.
essentially, and that was probably the shittiest way to explain it.
No,
guys.
it totally makes sense.
It's late, but I mean, that's really what we're trying to do here. We're trying to get leverage on the field. So if the chalkiest player doesn't go off and you have his direct pivot, then you're going to be immediately ahead of everyone. So that's really what I'm looking at here, and that's what I'm going to continue to do. And as far as pricing goes, I think I've dabbled in the chalky guys, the high price guys, and then I've played the dumbass, $1,000 plays at captain.
Yeah.
And I think I'm starting to sit on more of a middle of the pack strategy, and it's been working out a little bit better. And when I think about it, it's like doing a 3 or 4 game parlay, but instead of having a bunch of underdogs that you're choosing 3 winners and then going with a maybe like a 2 plus 50 underdog that might have a chance to win. And that's how you're increasing your odds on the parlay. That's what we're doing here. We're trying to limit the amount of exposure that we have to risk, but by staying different enough. And that's really what we want to do, is we want to get just different enough.
Yep.
And that's what we're trying to do here. And that's why we're not going to throw in Alex Armah into even one lineup. Because, he is $200, but I'm not going to risk his 1 carry.
And unless he really sticks out, like some guys can at $200, there's no point in getting more than one lineup with him, in my opinion. Now, like on Sunday night, I was heavy on Tyler Lockett, and he was the third highest owned guy in the captain. I have no problem with being chalky in the captain if I think that guy has a high enough upside, and I can pair him with guys I feel can get me leverage. If I don't have any insight, or if I don't feel like there's any chance that a low owned guy can go off, then I'd rather just go with a middle tier guy in the captain and go with high probability picks in the flex. I know we've already talked about that. So let's look at real quick some Curtis Samuel builds right now. So if we sort by highest projected, now I would get a lot more 2-4s involved in this. So I would set rules to have, two Panthers, one of which is in the captain, and 4 Falcons. But I feel like this, like you can get DJ Moore, Mike Davis, Robbie Anderson, and Teddy Bridgewater. You can get Matt Ryan, Russell Gage. You can get a Julio Jones. If you feel like a 5-1 is necessary, this could be a great option for you. If you feel like a 5-1 in favor of the Panthers, and the Panthers are going to blow this team out, this is just a good option. Anyways, we're gonna end this stream right now. We're hitting about an hour. We try to keep it under an hour. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We really appreciate all the comments and everything you guys have been leaving lately. We have a Discord that I'm going to link in the description. We're going to offer some projections that we've been making lately for free. The Discord's free. We can talk about whatever you want. Please comment on our YouTube videos. It really helps us out with the algorithm. We're doing Showdown Slate videos for every single Showdown Slate during the week, and then we're going to start doing a recap video looking at the optimal winner, looking at ownership, things like that. So that's very important to learn from your mistakes and just learn what the winners learn what the best players in DFS are doing. And especially with Showdown, it's sort of a niche thing now. Showdown is its own sort of thing. Learning what the right moves are when it comes to Showdown, so you don't end up losing your money by making dumb mistakes. Anyways, Ellie, send us out. What do you think this game is going to end up? What do you think the result's going to be?
I think this could easily be 35-30 31. I'm going to go Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, I like Carolina. I think they're a very consistent, like, kind of boring team. Like, not super sexy, but also they have upside, and I think they can be a playoff team. It's going to be hard in the NFC to make the playoffs unless they can win their division. I'm going to go... God. I'm going to go 27-24 Carolina. I think it's going to be... I think this is going to be a closer game than the projections are giving us. I think it's going to be pretty close. I think I'm right where Vegas is at, right at that 3-point line.
I probably overshot the shit out of that, to be completely honest. But I mean, at the same time, I feel like this game could get sloppy, and these offenses are good enough that if there's a couple turnovers here and there in bad field position, this thing could get out of hand pretty quickly. So I don't know, man. It's going to be fun. I think this is going to actually be a fun game. Nothing will be as good as the Cardinals game from Sunday night, but you know, this could be a decently played game.
DK Metcalf chasing down Budda Baker, that was one of the most insane moments I can remember ever. It was like The Rock chasing down his child. Like that
Kevin
was
Hart, yeah.
Oh yeah, The Rock chasing down Kevin Hart. That was insane. That guy is fucking huge. Budda Baker is not a tiny dude, and he's not a slow guy. I cannot believe that play. That was unbelievable. Anyways, we are going to have a video on Friday morning recapping the Thursday night showdown. Real quick, probably 15 to 20 minutes, just talking about the optimal lineups, talking about what we did right, what we did wrong. We're going to be transparent with all of our picks. We'll show you our exposures. We'll show you everything. Anyways, thank you so much for liking and commenting. We will see you guys later. Thanks a lot.